What a great turnout. I'm Tony Sprackett, and I'm Vice President of the Fernwood Community Association. You have me at the mic today because our President, Lori Rubin, who's standing at the back, has bad vocal cords today due to a cold. So I'm here to welcome you on behalf of the Fernwood Community Association and on behalf of Lori, our President. So to begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we are here today on the traditional territory of the Kungwan people. I'd like us to be mindful of that. And I just want to say thank you up front to each and every one of these candidates for caring enough about their community to try and help it be a better place. Sometimes in the heat of the discourse, we forget that. And people get a little bit mean to these candidates, and I think they deserve a little love. I also want to say some thank yous. We had an organizing committee of Lori Rubin, Mary Jane Crawley, David Maxwell, Sid Taffler, and John Farquharson. We had lots of volunteers to help us get set up. We also need to say thank you to the Fernwood Neighborhood Resource Group for providing the space that we're using today in the community center. Other people that helped out, Friendly Giant, maintenance company in Fernwood, Simply Pure Water. We have water at the back if you need it. All streamed up. So you will be able to, there is a link on the fca.ca website. You'll be able to see yourself listening intently after this. And there are some people that will be listening and watching live. The Eaves of Destruction had this space rented for this time right now. That's a roller skating group, and they were kind enough to defer to us for this use. Also, Pacific Audio Works for this. Washrooms. Who knows where the washrooms are? Do you? All right, down to the back door and to the right, if you need them. Cell phones need to be turned off. And I just want to give you one reminder that we have one more election event that's going to take place on Tuesday evening, and that's for the school board trustees. So we've done one for the council candidates. This is the mayoral debate today, and then Tuesday we have the school board trustees, and that'll be at the Fernwood Community Association building at 1923 Fernwood Road, and it's going to be from 7 till 9 p.m. At the Paul Phillips Hall. So with that, I would like to introduce the moderator for tonight, and that's Sid Taffler of The Record. I hope you enjoyed the debate and that you all choose wisely. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. So this afternoon is really about you wonderful people who are here from Fernwood and other parts of Victoria and the candidates. Those of us who are organizing this event, we're providing a structure. And the candidates and all of us soon will understand what the structure is. And then we turn it over to you to ask the questions, and we'll explain the process in a minute. One exception to that is, as we begin, with respect to the people who are the chief organizers, the Fernwood Community Association, there'll be the first initial question from the chair of the Land Use Committee. After that, all the questions come from the audience members. And this is the process. And the candidates have all been made aware of it, and now we'd like to make the rest of you aware of it as well. And there were some handouts as we walked in. So there'll be brief introductory remarks by each candidate. We'll go alphabetical order, and the closing remarks will go reverse alphabetical order. So that's the first part of the process. And then we'll have our question from David Maxwell of the Community Association. And those of you who want to ask questions, you may know this already, but the process is you put your names, you give your names to the people at the back there who have the table, and your names go in a box. And then they are drawn out 4 at a time. 4 people at a time are invited to that microphone there in the middle. I hope that's clear. It's right there in the middle. And when you get up to ask your question, please, you have 30 seconds. We want to keep this going at a good pace so we get enough opportunity for everybody who wants to ask a question to do so. So you have 30 seconds to ask your question, and please choose 2 candidates. We're not going to have all the candidates ask your question. Choose any 2 candidates you wish. After they introduce themselves, you'll know who they are, and perhaps you already do. And then the candidates have 60 seconds to respond to your question. So it's a fairly quick process. The other option we've added is to allow for some spontaneity, which is that the candidates each have 2 wild cards. There they are. And so at any time when a candidate is not chosen to respond, he or she may play a wild card. In other words, you didn't choose candidate A, B, or C to respond to this question. He or she uses wild card, and then they get a chance. But of course, they only have 2 wild cards for the whole evening. And their chance is, they have a little more complication. They have 2 options. One is, they may respond to the question in 60 seconds, just like the other candidates did. They also may say, I challenge. I challenge X candidate or Y candidate, which means they want to specifically challenge what was said by a previous candidate. And then that challenge has to be done in 30 seconds. I know it's complicated, but Neil, our timekeeper, is aware of all these parameters.
How long do we have for opening remarks?
60 seconds.
Okay.
60 seconds for opening remarks. And then once the challenger challenges within 30 seconds, that precipitates a 2-way, moderated, hopefully not moderated in detail, exchange between those 2 candidates. Is that fairly clear? Okay, is it clear to the candidates as well?
2 minutes.
Good, okay, thank you very much. And then, of course, at the very end, we will have 60-second closing remarks by the candidates. I'm anticipating that to be roughly 5:45 p.m. Our timekeeper is Neil Williams. Thank you, Neil, sitting in the front here. And he will flash, the candidates and the moderator should know he will flash an orange, you have orange and red, right, Neil? He'll flash an orange card when there's a 10-second warning, and then that's a good time for the candidate to wrap up his or her remarks, and then a red card when the time is up. Pretty clear, I would say. So at this time, I think it's appropriate for our candidates, and we are very grateful that they're here, and I agree with everything that Tony said about their sacrifice and how much we appreciate it. I'd like to also add that, of course, if you have your cell phones off, that would be good. And we all, especially me, but we all should be respectful and have a well functioning and productive debate. So I'm going to ask people not to hiss and boo, but also just in terms of time, think of this as a theater performance and only applaud at the end, because a lot of applause takes a lot of time, and we also know that some candidates have more supporters than others. So I'll request that of the audience as well. So we'll all respect each other, and we'll have an excellent debate with some excellent candidates. So are you ready? Neil? Okay, we're going to start our 60-second introductions with.
Do you want us to stand?
Sit as you wish, yes. With Mike Geoghegan, please.
Hi, my name's Mike Geoghegan, and I'm running for mayor of Victoria. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for coming out today. This is an extremely important election. The reason I'm running in this election is because I see a city that I have lived and or worked in my entire adult life rapidly sleepwalking towards a future where it's going to be only for the very wealthy and the very poor. I want a Victoria where middle class and working class people can still have a home, where young people can still start families. And that's why I'm extremely proud that another candidate, Rob Duncan, who's a well-known housing and anti-poverty activist, has endorsed my campaign. I worked for 7 years at the BC Legislature, including 4.5 years as a ministerial assistant in the Mike Harcourt government. I have a 22-year-old son, a 17-year-old daughter, and a 12-year-old daughter. And right now, none of them have a future in this city. Small business people can't find employees that are to work, and those employees can't find a place to live. As your next mayor, I will solve this problem. That's why I have the backing of the Vancouver Island construction trade unions and people like the mayor of Langford. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And now, Stephen Hammond, please.
Thanks. 1 year ago, yesterday, I was on CFAX, and I asked the question, do people want to change in their mayor and council? If I was alone, I had better things to do with my time. But I was not alone. The word got out, and we did a survey of more than 500 people, most of them agreeing that we needed a change. Our numbers grew, and all of our volunteers held community consultations in which we talked to people and then came up with the principles. After that, we went and found candidates to run for council. We've got Ms. Randy Joel, Gary Alberts, Stephen Andrew, and Andrew Reeve. And in this process, we have more than 100 volunteers who are doing fundraising, they're doing door-to-door canvassing with me, they are doing pamphlet drops and fundraising as well as election day prep. If you're looking for real change on October 20th, I encourage you to vote for the new council.ca team of candidates. My name is Stephen Hammond, and I'm running for Mayor of Victoria.
Thank you, Stephen. Lisa Helps.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming today. I haven't been nervous before a debate as I have been today because this is my own neighborhood, and it's funny when you're on home territory, you get a little bit more nervous. When I took office 4 years ago, we had an unfinished bridge, an unstarted sewage project, a retail vacancy rate above 10%, no dedicated money to homelessness and housing, a transportation system stuck in the 20th century, no real leadership on climate change. Fast forward 4 years, together working with my council, we've solved some of these issues. We've got dedicated funding for homelessness and housing, we've got a bridge that's finished, a sewage project that's started, and we're just getting going. So I would say that after 4 years, it's not time for a change, it's time for 4 more years doing the work that we've been doing, building a compassionate, inclusive, affordable city. And that's what I will commit to doing for the next 4 years, and I really look forward to your questions today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. David Johnson, please.
Good afternoon. My name is David Arthur Johnston. I'm a candidate for Mayor of Victoria. I have a rare platform that includes a jump towards austerity. I believe we've been living in somewhat of a foggy dream world where we think we're rich when in fact we have a $100 million debt. I believe the Blue Bridge had criminal contrivance behind it that put us in the pockets of the developers. I believe that harm reduction is a dark scam to flood the streets with addicts. I believe tent cities are a viable option, but they cannot work while the streets are owned by darkness. Please check me out on Facebook. I believe that once you get to know me, you'll see no other option. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce McQuiggan, please.
I'm right at home in this gym. I used to take my kids here to play on Saturday mornings in the fathers and kids play area. I've lived in this neighborhood for most of the last 25 years. We won't talk about when I was out in the land of stew for a little while. Just a year and a half. I got back as soon as I can. I live walking distance from here. My wife works across the street. I've had 3 kids graduate from Vic High. This is my community. You know, we're supposed to talk about our qualifications and our policy, but I want to talk about something else while I have 15 or 20 seconds, and that's this idea of what politics is. You know, you have a bunch of people lined up at a table up here who you're going to select to be your next mayor. That's a little bit like watching somebody ride a bicycle in order to do a swimming test. Winning an election is not the same as being an elected official. What I would like you to do is to look at all of us with an open mind and decide who is likely to be the best person to be your mayor, not the best person to win this election. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Christoph Smuda, please.
Hello, good evening. My name is Krzysztof Żmuda. I'm the small business owner, Test of Europe Deli in Victoria, provided for last 8 years Eastern European food to Great Victoria. I decided to run for the mayor because I want to lead Victoria into the new path of common sense actions, as the last few years everything is done without common sense and without consultation with residents. Today, Victoria is double crime, double rent, commercial, residential, more deaths of overdose people, more homeless people, more traffic, more pollution, and less parkings. That's why Victoria needs help, not helps. Thank you.
Thank you, Christoph. And so, we have one question to be asked by the Community Association. After that, it's up to the audience. I will call people up four at a time, randomly. So at this point, the first question goes to David Maxwell, Chair of the Land Use Committee of the FCA, and he will choose the two candidates to whom the question will be asked.
Before I do that, though, I want to put a little plug in for the Land Use Committee. Anybody in Greater Victoria, or even from Saskatchewan for that matter, can join the Land Use Committee and attend our meetings. If you want to get on our mailing list so you know when the meetings are, you can pick up a piece of paper that looks like this at the back table. And that's especially important because on the 25th of October, we have an important informal meeting with a developer who will, if he's successful, build the tallest building ever built in Fernwood, and that's going to be 12 stories tall. Okay, now, on to my question. So, Victoria's 2012 official community plan was developed over time with many public consultation opportunities that many of you probably remember. So this question is for Bruce and Stephen. Please comment on Council's current practice to make important amendments to the official community plan by sending letters to people living 200 meters from the proposed rezoning and publishing information in the paper, inviting people to make their written comments or attend a council meeting and speak on the matter.
Is the question clear to the two?
Not sure.
Yeah, David, please.
Are you asking if it's a good process?
Yes, it's a process question.
Okay, all right, sure.
Can we have Stephen first, please? That's who you mentioned first. Yeah.
Actually, the whole notion of consultation and making sure that people have a say in the land use is very important. When I've been at the doors, and I've been to thousands of doors in this campaign, as a matter of fact, I was in your neighborhood just this afternoon, it's one of the things that people have said to me that that they feel as though there is development that's being pushed on them, and they don't feel comfortable with that, and they don't have a say in it. Now, when I went through that big document, and there was a lot of interesting information about that, what became clear is that there was a lot of information that was given out to people, but a lot of people also in each community, in each neighborhood, didn't necessarily feel as though they were heard. So the process of actually sending it out to people who are in the area, I would actually like to encourage the engagement department within the city to actually be going door to door, and when it's going to affect their neighborhood, that they actually get more of a say so that people don't have to come to these long-winded meetings and stay up till midnight in order to have a say in the process.
Thank you. Bruce, please.
Thank you very much. We have to have some kind of process to be able to access communities' opinions about important development issues that influence their neighborhoods. The process that we currently have would be found in 1930. I teach sociology, I do consultation and stakeholder consultations in different industries, and this process could not be more flawed. There are a million different ways to actually get neighborhood input that is efficient for neighborhood members of the neighborhood in terms of the time they have to put into putting in that input, and they can be collated and analyzed fairly quickly. A million different survey methods, door knocking as Stephen suggested, and everything else. So that's the kind of process that I would bring in, a more informed social research process. Moreover, I have to say the fact that we have stuck to this kind of process in the 21st century seems to show to me that we've become a slave of private interests, that this is not an engagement process, this is a megaphone process to distort your ideas about how things should work.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you to the Community Association. I'd like to now call up our first 4 audience member people to pose questions to 2 candidates of their choice, and they are Rosalie Schmidsader, please. Is Rosalie here? Rosalie? Okay. Kay Marshall, please. Is Kay Marshall here? Please, to the mic, please. Floyd Martin. Floyd Martin, please, to the mic. And Leanne Trenchard. Leanne? We'll go third. Okay. So please, one at a time, please, Kay, ask your question at the mic and pose it to any 2 candidates you choose.
My question is, in terms of development within neighborhoods in our city, how would you ensure that community members... Oh, start again. My question is, in terms of development within neighborhoods in our city, how would you ensure that community members and neighbors are consulted and are heard in that process? And how would you ensure that neighborhood plans are in place to guide development? And I would like Lisa to answer that, and Stephen.
Thank you very much for the question. The question that was asked by David Maxwell is a good jumping off point for your question. The 200-meter mail-out and the public hearing is a requirement of provincial legislation. That's not optional. We have to do that, and it's really important that we do that because that's the most basic way to get the final decision and final input. But there's a lot that we do before that. Working with the community and the Community Association Land Use Committee process is excellent. Often I'll be stopped in the grocery store and someone will say, hey, have you heard about this development that's coming? And I say, no, I haven't. Have you? And the community always says yes first. Before a developer is allowed to submit a proposal to City Hall, they have to go to the Community Association Land Use Committee. They have to get input from the committee. They're supposed to make changes. They don't always. But we get a record of every single Community Association Land Use Committee meeting when we get the proposal at City Hall. So I think the process can be tweaked for sure, but the CALUC process is really, really important, and I wouldn't want to see anything done with that.
Thank you.
This, again, just follows on the last question, and I appreciate how much it means to people. The mayor just recently, I think it was last week, said that they're backing off, the mayor and council, I assume, said that they're backing off of a development plan and also the neighborhood plan for Gonzales. And when I've gone to every door in that neighborhood, and people were really upset. But you're looking for suggestions, not just criticism. And the thing is, I am saying that we must absolutely listen to the neighborhoods about this. And I'm not interested in hearing from people who are saying it's divisive and no one wants change. Everyone recognizes this is a fantastic place to live. Everyone recognizes that where we can increase the population that's reasonable for the neighborhood, that people are fine with that. But what you've got to do is you actually have to listen to people. It can't be 2 weeks before an election when people have been saying that it hasn't been fair for the last 2 years, that's when you listen to them. And so I'm saying we got to have the real consultation, listen to what people want, and then we go forward with any of these plans for development.
Thank you. Our next questioner, please.
Sid?
I'm sorry, there's a challenge. You wish to be a challenge or just to respond?
I want to answer the question as well.
Okay, sorry.
Hi, Bruce McGuigan again. I think if we had a voice vote right now on a 12-story tower in Fernwood, let's do that. How many people want a 12-story tower in Fernwood? We don't even know where it is. We don't want a 12-story. There we go. So one of the problems that we have is that we have a process in which you actually have no say. You get to have input, which then gets to be ignored. And this is what everybody in every community in this city has experienced. You have input that gets to be ignored. Very little is done to integrate your perspective. There's no requirement to integrate your perspective into any plan for anything that gets done in this city. Let's bring about a process for planning that allows us to require planners to satisfactorily incorporate the input from the community. In effect, let's have a plan around which we can agree that there are goalposts through which a development has to be kicked, and that neighborhoods can say, not outside those goalposts. We don't have that right now. And something as much like the flawed, okay, I ran out of time.
Thank you.
Apparently.
Yeah, thank you.
No, not
Okay.
for me.
We now have our next member of the public to ask a question. Leanne, please.
This is for Michael and Lisa. Just looking at going ahead with the Crystal Pool and the Central Park development, and just wondering how you see, what your feelings are about that, and how you would proceed with the use of space and our new pool.
Thank you for that excellent question. I have an apartment right on Queens Avenue, so I'm right in behind the Crystal Pool, and certainly the first project that I became aware of, the substantial costs, et cetera, I wasn't impressed with, and I certainly lean towards refurbishing the pool. However, in further subsequent discussions, I am also concerned about the amount of downtime that would occur with a refurbishment. So although I am inclined to refurbish rather than replace, if that leads to an excessive amount of downtime for that pool, say 2 years, and if the costs of replacing can be comparable to that of refurbishing, I am open to that. In short, I want the best outcome for the people who use that pool, and I want the best outcome for the taxpayers of Victoria. And I'll let the facts guide my decision.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The facts are that we did a detailed business case analysis to determine whether renovating, refurbishing, or building a new facility was the best value for taxpayer money. And what we came to, looking at the life cycle of the asset, so a new pool will last for 50 years, is that replacing the pool is the best value for taxpayer money. The challenge that we're in right now is people love the pool, and I was just there this afternoon. People love the pool, and people love Central Park. People love both of those things. And the big challenge that we're going to have after the election is two things. One, making sure that we meet the federal and provincial funding deadline of January 31st, 2019. We cannot miss that deadline, or everybody else in the province is going to get the money, and we are not. Number two, that means we're going to have to make a really, really difficult decision as a council and as a community. Do we build the pool where the park currently is and move the playground and the basketball courts so that that can still be used, or do we close down the pool for 2 years? And that's a big challenge. We're going to have to grapple with that, and I'll tell you more when you ask another question.
Thank you very much. So, Floyd, if you'll hold on a minute, Floyd, we'll ask our next question. But just to keep the flow going, I'm going to call up the next 4 people to pose questions as well, if they can please take the mic behind Floyd. And they are Riga Godron, Mona Brashuk. Mona? Is Mona here? Thank you. Ross Crockford. You can just take your place behind the mic. Thank you. And Raymond Saint-Arnaud. Is Raymond or Raymond here? Thank you very much. Floyd, your question, please, and who the 2 candidates you'd like to respond.
This question's for Bruce and Stephen, and I'd like to know where you stand on the amalgamation of all the municipalities.
Usually in the order in which he requests. It's Bruce and then Stephen.
Thank you very much for the question. I'm not ducking it. Well, first of all, yes to amalgamation. Second of all, the biggest issue that we have in amalgamation and legitimately reaching out to other municipalities to try and have some kind of integrated political structure to be a community together is that we're not a community together in Victoria. We're not an amalgamated city. How can we ask Saanich to join in? And people in Saanich are kind of dubious about it because they know how people in North Park or Fernwood or James Bay or any of the other communities in this city feel about what's been going on in terms of development in this city. We don't have a consensus in this city. Everybody I talk to is mad at City Hall. You know, we just had a land use process completely stopped because the neighborhood, Fairfield Gonzales, didn't like what was going on. So we have to fix ourselves before we're going to be a very attractive partner to Saanich or any of the other communities. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think we're broke. And so I think we're doing fine. I'm in favor of amalgamation. The Citizens Assembly is a very good process. It takes it out of the hands of politicians, which I never was one until now, and make sure that it's being done on a thoughtful process, on an economically efficient process to make sure that anything we're going ahead with makes economic sense. Amalgamation, I don't want anyone reading in between this. The fact is, amalgamation seems like a very, very good idea, and I'm more than eager to find out what the Citizens Assembly will say. So I encourage people to vote in favor of it if you want to.
Thank you. Riga, please.
My name is Riga Godrin. I'm running for Victoria City Council. My question is to Mike Geoghegan and Bruce McGuigan. From my perspective, previous council and mayor spent millions of dollars improving their commute from City Hall to Fernwood. I live in Fernwood myself. What mistakes do you think were made building the bike lanes, and how would you fix it?
Thank you for that question. Well, the first mistake was the inadequate consultation. And as the incumbent mayor has admitted, there wasn't proper consultation with the transit drivers, there wasn't proper consultation with senior groups, there wasn't proper consultation with disability groups. You now have this bike lane infrastructure on routes that were designated emergency routes for fire, ambulance, and police, and now fire, ambulance, and police are trying to avoid them. I think if we had a major disaster in this city, those bike lanes will have contributed to making that disaster worse. So the good news is that David Eby, the Attorney General, has let me know that ICBC is planning on spending $250 million, yes with a B, dollars on bike lanes in the province of British Columbia. So I think we can access some of those dollars, and after full and proper consultation, we will make changes. And what will those changes be? I'd like to see more bike lanes on secondary roads, fewer on arterial roads, and I don't want to see them hardscaped in. I want to see paint, and if we have a bike lane on a one-way road, the bike lane's one way as well.
Thank you. Bruce?
Thank you. I will mention, Mike, that on Friday morning at the real estate board debate, you did say you would rip out Fort Street, just to be clear.
I'll also point out that you said the bike lanes would stay full stop at your first debate.
Yeah, and they will. They will stay.
Well, I can't keep track of your flip-flopping.
No, I've never said anything else other than that the bike lanes will stay. We've spent a lot of money on them. Most of us like them, but I think that the bike lanes should go in the direction of traffic travel. A painted line isn't enough. My niece lives in this neighborhood. She's a single mom. She works for the province of British Columbia, and she was put out of work. She was actually working on her PhD at the time for 2 years because a painted line didn't defend her from a motorist that changed lanes right into her. So hardscaping or completely separating bicycle traffic is what I want to do to protect the members of my community and my family. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a wild card, a challenge from Mr. Johnson, please.
I think the bike lanes are part of a larger plan that includes the intentional, well, they're using the word densification. The population of Victoria is going to double in short order, and the bike lanes aren't necessarily for green use. It's more of a getting ready for towers everywhere and Victoria to turn into to continue evolving into a massive revenue generating machine. I think the bike lanes are extraneous, especially when we're $100 million in debt. Whatever float our debtors are allowing us to have to run this city, I would rather give everyone a Leatherman and a bag of seeds. Thank you.
Thank you. Mona, please.
Thank you. I'd like to direct my question to Lisa and Stephen. How will you make affordable childcare spaces available given the critical lack of educated, certified, and trained early childhood educators? Thank you.
Is that clear? Is that question clear? Okay.
Actually, one of the ways you can do it is by when developments are being proposed, that you include the community amenity contributions. And Victoria has got virtually none of that, especially when you compare that to other municipalities within BC, the municipalities that are growing like we have. And so the thing is that it would be wonderful to be able to get some of these CACs, as they're called, and they're built into it so that you make sure that it's in a number that doesn't stop development, but it's also something the developers say, yeah, I'll build that into my cost of buying the land and of the development I'm about to do. And those can go towards parks. Those can go towards perhaps medical clinics. Those can go toward daycare centers. So there's lots of things that you can actually do to help the community in situations like that. We just haven't been asking, or we haven't been requiring developers to do that, and there's lots of opportunity to do it. So that when things are being built, it's not a burden on the entire community, it's actually a contribution to the entire community.
Thank you. I think your question was about childcare staff. Yes. Yes. We have, kind of off the side of my desk right now, but working with the community, a Mayor's Childcare Solutions Working Group. And at the table, we have everybody involved. We've got the provincial government.
Folks who are having to stand. There are a few chairs that are available. Anybody please raise your hand if they have a chair near them so that people can sit, and those people can please come forward if they wish to sit. Thank you. And now we'll go to Ross, please. Oh, I'm sorry, is it a wild card?
Yeah.
You're playing a wild card? Sorry, Bruce.
Yeah, I've played all my wild cards. I'm going to ask Chris to give me his. Being able to afford to pay people properly is just a weird. Daycare supervisors, so we can work with kids who have been traumatized by violence at home or by the refugee experience. Don't call them, please. They're not taking a waiting list yet. We're starting construction in 2 weeks. Thank you. So I've already done it.
Okay. Ross, please.
Question for Stephen and Lisa. A big part of the reason why the bridge project went sideways and so far over budget was because city staff and consultants buried or bent information that was presented to council about whether you had a fixed price contract, whether the contractor had ever built anything in China before, whether other infrastructure in the city needed replacing or not. That stuff was not presented, and I was just wondering.
Come to your question, please, Ross.
Yes.
Right now.
What would you do, or what have you done to discipline or correct staff or consultants that provide you with incorrect information?
Answers, please.
Well, I don't get the opportunity to discipline the staff that I'm not the mayor of, and hopefully we don't have to do that too often. We are said, the new council.ca group, our team, has made it very clear that we want an independent audit of the Johnson Bridge. And as a matter of fact, a woman down here said, are we going to pay for that? And I think if you had to pay for that to get a better $40 million overrun, that's worth it. But as a matter of fact, the provincial authority will actually do the audit for us. And so it becomes really important for us to learn our mistakes before we go ahead with the next large capital project, which is the Crystal Pool or any capital project. So if people are leading us astray, we don't want those same people to be making the same mistakes again. Anytime the work that I do is about communication. The work that I do is about holding people accountable. And on a daily basis, I'm consulting across this country to say, if something has gone wrong, you've got to make it very clear what you expect to be done, and then you've got to hold people's feet to the fire. And I would expect to do that if I'm mayor, because we can't have this happening again.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you look around City Hall these days, you'll notice that there's nobody there still who worked on the bridge project. So let's let that stand. Secondly, we have done a...
Is that a
Things
question?
that have been laid on us. Yes, and I addressed this to Steve and Bruce.
Sorry, who were the two?
Steve and Bruce.
Steve and Bruce.
Steve.
Is the question clear, Stephen?
Well, although I didn't hear the one about daycare that well, my apologies. When I was in the Gonzales area, just as an example, people were saying to me that they're being forced to take the plans from the city. And I said, I must be missing something, because I thought that these neighborhood associations actually got to have a say in what's going on. And they said, no, we keep getting pushback from the city on this. And so that's why I was confused, because I thought it doesn't make sense. When we set, what my desire is to do is to create certainty. The plans will be in place. And if you come to this city with the plans that meet those, that aren't bigger, that aren't more dense than what the community has allowed for, then you'll be able to go ahead. But if you go beyond that, then you're going to have to show that there is substantial, and I mean substantial, community support for this. So unfortunately, I'm not in there now, but what I would really like to do is make a positive change where people don't feel as though the city is forcing things on them for any of the development plans.
Bruce?
Thank you. Sid has an online magazine called The Record. It's, what is it, victoriarecord.com, Sid? And I've got an article on that about my feelings around greenwashing and densification and what it's doing to our neighborhoods. I think one of the problems is that there is a distinction between the OCP and zoning. OCP is a maybe, we could, we might, that developers kind of take as a wish list that they can and they will do. So that's a little bit of a problem. I don't think the OCP is actually an official community plan. It's kind of a developer's daydream for our geography. It's geo-pimping. It's not really a community plan because it doesn't involve the interests or the will of the people, the nature of communities, and what we want to do in our communities. And I find that a bit problematic. So I think, as I said earlier, we actually have to alter the process of approving alterations in communities to give, within certain goalposts, communities a veto. Those goalposts will have to be worked out when we look at it later. I'm not going to say there's going to be an absolute veto because there are some things that we have to deal with, but I think that's what we have to do.
Thank you. Okay, we have a challenge from Lisa Helps or a response.
It's
correct?
not a challenge. I just like to answer the
Response.
question
Okay.
as well. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
When we did the official community plan in 2012, there was substantial input from the community. But the problem with the OCP is that other than in Burnside Gorge and Victoria West, where the neighborhood plans have been completed, it doesn't align with the neighborhood plans. And that's why for the past 4 years, we've been working really hard to get the neighborhood plans done. And unlike when the plans were done in the 90s, where the OCP was the bylaw and the plan was just a policy, what we're doing now is aligning the OCP with the neighborhood plan. So when Burnside Gorge neighborhood plan was finished, we changed the OCP to reflect what the neighborhood wanted. When Vic West local area plan was finished, we changed the OCP to reflect the neighborhood plan. So now there's no discrepancy between them in the two neighborhoods where the local area plans have been done. And that's why local area plans are so important. Burnside Gorge, there was a development that came forward against the neighborhood plan, and we voted it down.
Thank you. Darren, please.
Okay.
Question and two candidates.
Darren Marr, resident of North Park. I'd love to give my question to all of you candidates, but for the purpose of this
just
forum, I'll ask this question to Lisa and Bruce. There have been some major projects during the past few years in which City Council have not adequately provided consultation and input from all stakeholders affected, including the Johnson Street Bridge, the Downtown Bike Network, Crystal Pool, and Indigenous reconciliation efforts. If elected, what would you do to improve greater communication, consultation, and input with all stakeholders on major civic initiatives?
Thanks. I'm so glad for this question because there's this narrative out there that we're doing a terrible job at consultation. And I'd like to tell a different story. The story that I'd like to tell is that over the past 4 years, and this is a story based in facts, it's not imagination. Over the past 4 years, we've done hundreds of consultations. The Vic West Neighborhood Plan, the Burnside Gorge Neighborhood Plan, the Plastic Bag Ban Consultation, the Arts and Culture Master Plan, the Parks and Open Space Master Plan, the Cecilia Ravine Park Consultation, the Topaz Park Consultation, the Ship Point Consultation, the Centennial Square Consultation, the Climate Leadership Plan Consultation, lunchtime lectures, Black History Month, and so on and so on and so on. And what people keep pointing to are 4 things out of hundreds that didn't go well. I don't know that I need to say much more. We're learning from what doesn't go well, but we've done hundreds of things where we've had positive feedback and positive interaction with the community. We'll learn from what hasn't gone well, and we'll continue to refine the process accordingly. Thank you.
So a lot of the consultations have gone well, and a broken clock is accurate twice a day. The fact of the matter is that we have a broken, I think, process of consultation. It doesn't take into consideration contemporary consultation tools that we have. I've done consultation, not neighborhood community consultation, but usually regulatory agency consultation with very angry people around regulation. And one of the things that you have to do is actually go looking for the opinions or the perspectives of people who you know aren't going to agree with you. You actually have to reach out to those people because sometimes you're not going to bring them in. The fact that some things go well doesn't really alter the fact that an awful lot's gone wrong, and that people get very upset about it going wrong because they don't feel like they had the opportunity to have their say, or that their say was completely ignored. We can fix that with a much more professional, better planned process of consultation, not a consultation process that frankly looks like a megaphone from City Hall telling us what the city is going to look like.
Thank you. Okay, we have a challenge from Christoph, please, or a response to a question, correct? Response?
Yeah, this is the question for the Lisa Helps, of course, consultation. I have the question for you, audience. Did you fail and her councils to consult with you about anything in Victoria? Like, for example, make referendum about the removing statue from the City Hall of our first Prime Minister? Did she consult with you? None. That's why zero consultation. So move Victoria forward. You have to eliminate Lisa Helps and her council completely from City Hall and choose somebody who can listen and do the consultation with you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Sorry? No, that's true, please. We're not reacting, but a little bit of it will be tolerated, but we shouldn't really have much. Yeah. No, we should not have much of it. Yes, okay. Mary, please.
Okay. Mary Judy Jones from Fairfield. My question is on climate change and environment, and what I see is a very poor record in Victoria. The loss of trees continues unabated with every development, especially the bigger it gets. They take everything out. And secondly, we had a crisis with the Gonzales Hill, which is a reserve for Gary Oaks, and they're really getting cut all over the place.
Could you form your question, please, Mary?
Okay. The question, all right. The question is that since there was no help from City Hall, from the council, on the Gary Oak Reserve, then I'm asking Bruce and Stephen, what would they do, what measures could be done to prevent such loss of trees, and what would you do in a crisis?
Thank you. Bruce and Stephen, please.
Thank you for the question. And actually, I have to be honest and say that until I started running for mayor, I wasn't aware that this was an issue, but I have spoken to a lot of people in different communities about this. We do have a tree preservation bylaw in the city of Victoria, and the fines are really heavy if you do an unauthorized cut of a tree, or do an unauthorized logging of a tree, cutting down of a tree, killing of a tree. But the process to actually get a permit is not really that difficult. And so we have a lot of developers getting their $200 permits to take down trees. We've just had this happen at the Truth Center. We've had this with a whole bunch of other developments where large parts of the urban forest have been destroyed and will literally take 50, 60, 70 years to replace those trees. So that's part of the problem, that we have to stop allowing developers to do that. We have to aggressively protect green space, and part of that we can do through zoning. Land zoned as open green space can continue to be zoned as open green space and not allow developers to turn it into condos. I know a lot of people want an increase in density, but you really can't have that both ways.
I also had not given it a lot of thought other than when Jack and I moved close to the Truth Center, the former Truth Center, and then I actually went to some of the meetings where people were talking about the trees that were taken down. And that was a real surprise to me, because I thought, why in a city as beautiful as Victoria, why, when so many people care about the environment, would you be taking down trees? And then there was a lot of people at the community meetings who were saying, but you're replacing them with very sort of shallow-rooted trees, and this was a concern. So it's something that as I've gone along in the various communities, people have said, look at that tree, that's down, look at that, that's going. And I realize there obviously needs to be more that is done in order to preserve the trees. I think that when you are going for a development, like has been done, and the mayor has approved 95% of the major developments in the last 4 years, that we have got to give more thought to what is happening with the trees and the environment around us. It's all part of the whole process. It can't just be ignored.
Thank you. And now, no applause, please. No applause. And now we will call up 4 more people before Avi gets to ask his question, please. Is Anita Coleman here, please? Anita, please come forward. Jill Picard. Jill, please. If Jill is here, Jill Picard will go after Anita. And then we have Barrett Blackwood. Barrett will come next. Barrett, please step forward. Is he here? Barrett? And then we've got Zach Peters. Zach? Thank you very much. So, Avi?
Great to see a full room here. This is a question framed in regards to attracting federal money or provincial money. Why do you think there is no stumping or debate for the CRD during the election cycle? And what will you do to increase public transparency at the CRD? As a sidebar, would we get more money with a stronger CRD? This message is for Lisa and Bruce.
What was the first part of the question? Stumping? What did you say?
Stumping is the political process of debating, knocking on doors.
So what's your question about this? Can you ask it again about the CRD?
Sure.
One question, please. One question.
Okay. Why don't you think we have stumping or debates for the CRD? Lisa and Bruce.
Meaning door knocking or canvassing of the community?
The whole thing.
Whole thing.
And why aren't we getting more money? In Victoria, we do. So you'll notice that councillors who are running for Victoria Council also identify whether or not they're running for the CRD. And then when you go and vote tomorrow or Saturday, you'll get to vote for the councillors, but also you'll get to vote for the CRD directors. So in Victoria, there is an opportunity to have those debates during the election. I think actually in this past term, more than ever before, we've attracted significant amounts of federal funding through our cooperation at the Capital Regional District. So I brought a motion to the CRD table with my councillor colleague Izet and Loveday to ask the CRD to borrow up to $30 million to fund new affordable housing, particularly for people who are homeless. And through the CRD, we got everyone to say yes, even Langford and Colwood and Souk. And then because we were working together well as a CRD, the province put in another $30 million, and the federal government put in $30 million. So we have $90 million dedicated to homelessness and housing because we're working together well at the CRD on that issue.
Thank you. Bruce?
I think one of the things that Avi might be getting at is that there's an awful lot of policy set regionally by the CRD that's not the subject of actual open political debate. That we're not engaging in a process where people who are running for the CRD are actually going out and telling us what they're going to do or represent as people who are running for the CRD. One of the issues, of course, that's really obvious for this community and the 13 community, or all of the 13 communities in the capital region, is that we have to have a better transportation plan. We have to have a transportation system that integrates these communities, and that perhaps if you're running to be a CRD member, that maybe we should be talking about the kinds of things you will represent as a member of the CRD. Just as being an MLA or an MP is a different level of governance for which there are different issues, being a member of the CRD or a representative of the CRD is a different level of government for which there are issues we should be running on. Did I get that correct? Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to have Mike now playing a wild card.
Yeah, further to what Bruce said, the CRD is part of the price we pay for having the population of less than Burnaby split into 13 different municipalities. But I want to talk about the issue of getting federal and provincial dollars. Now, some of you might not know this, but when the West Coast shipbuilding industry was in serious danger of going extinct, it was the BC building trades that came to me. And I went to Ottawa, and I successfully lobbied first on their behalf and then on C-SPAN's behalf to make sure that the contract for building our next generation of Coast Guard vessels came to British Columbia. When patients in this community in Victoria were waiting 13 months for an MRI. Patients with brain tumors. The Victoria doctors passed the hat and they hired me because they wanted to see more public dollars going into public MRI facilities. And that campaign was successful. And we ended up doubling the amount of provincial funding that goes into MRIs. So if you're looking for a mayor that can actually get dollars and has a proven track record of success in terms of lobbying the federal and provincial government, then I would strongly encourage you to vote for me on October 20th.
Thank you, Mike. Before we proceed, I just want to ask the audience, are there folks here who would like to ask a question and haven't had an opportunity yet? Please give me a show of hands. Anybody who would like to ask a question hasn't? Okay, if you would do me the honor of submitting your name in the back, and then we will include you in the question process. Please go to the back where we have people taking names, and we will include you in the question. Anybody else wish to ask a question and hasn't had the opportunity yet? Okay, well, that's the process. Please go to the back, and we certainly have the time left to put in several more questions if you wish to ask one. Now we'll go to Anita, please. Question and 2 candidates.
Hi. Over the last few years, there's been a lot of construction of million-dollar condos. How is this providing affordable housing for Victorians that live and work here? This question is for Lisa Helps. Oh, and Bruce.
Great. Thank you very much. For 30 years in Victoria, there was no new rental housing built. 0. And so when we see cranes out there, we think those are all million-dollar condos. But in fact, what we've seen over the last 4 years is over 1,000 new rental units under construction. Not million-dollar condos. So there are 1,000 new rental units of construction. Yeah, if she, yeah.
I think you should let Lisa answer the question, please.
And that's not good enough. And so what we've been doing for the last 4 years is also working really hard on affordable housing. We've convinced the province to buy every single vacant building in this city and fill it up with affordable housing. So Mount Edwards, Johnson Street Manor, Tally Ho, Super 8, those are now publicly owned buildings that will be in public hands forever. At the same time, we've partnered with the school district. We're opening 88 units of affordable housing for families in Burnside neighborhood. And when I say affordable, they're run by Pacifica, so truly affordable. We're opening a new fire hall on Johnson Street. On top of that, there'll be 130 units of affordable housing for families there. We've got another project in the works with the school district as well.
Thank you. Bruce, please.
Thank you for the question. And I keep using the example of North Vancouver, the district of North Vancouver, not the high-rise part at the bottom of the C-bus, bottom of the hill, but the district of North Vancouver, which has a similar population to us. And with half of the built units that we've built over the last few years, they extracted $148 million in community benefits. If they had the same number of units that we've built, that would have been closer to $300 million. $48 million of that in North Vancouver is going for housing for regular people, housing that's income specific, affordable housing. The other $100 million is going for things like, well, bridges, pools, municipal infrastructure. So one of the ways to do this is to actually get community benefits from developers. Millionaires aren't going to just give it to you, take it from them. And the thing is that when I was working in Surrey with kids 33 years ago, Surrey was doing that. People of Victoria were 3 decades behind Surrey. Surrey.
Thank you. And now Stephen will play a wild card.
I was out, one of our volunteers who's out canvassing with me this afternoon in your neighborhood is actually chair of a nonprofit organization that builds affordable housing. And one of the things is that it was just last week or the week before where the Victoria the Victoria staff said, we want you to spend $1 million on the affordable housing grants that the city gives. Right now, the city gives $250,000. And they give it in 10,000 to 30,000 increments to these associations. This is a great thing. I'm a guy that has to be I want to be very careful about not pledging things that we can't do. But when the city staff said, we need more of this, I'm on board with that. So I'm going to pledge that if I'm mayor, that I'm going to say we can come up with that other $750,000, perhaps not pay it in legal fees, and we'll have that money that will be available for affordable housing. That's a concrete thing that can be done, and I'm very much in favor of that.
Thank you. Jill, please.
My question is for Stephen and Michael. Do you plan to reduce speed limits to 30 kilometers on all neighborhood streets? And if so, how will it be enforced? Whoever.
No, I do not plan on doing that. You have to have a reason for it. It can't just be that you were sitting around the kitchen table with some people and you decided that it was going to go down to 30 kilometers. And the reason for, and I know it's not, the mayor isn't talking about having that done everywhere. But I was in a part of, again, canvassing what part of the city, and the woman says there is no 30 kilometers across from that school. And I said, I thought there was always 30 kilometers when you got in the school zones. And maybe this is just one of the exceptions. So where it's necessary, people are willing to go slow. But the numbers that are estimated on how much it's going to cost just to put up the signage would be a little bit, I think, a little bit crazy when you consider that there's got to be a good, solid case for saying, are you going to change the speeds? Because apparently the people don't understand it as it is, and people will tend to just sort of go along without actually knowing what the speeds are going to be. So I'm saying you can't just make this kind of blanket decision. If there's important information that's coming our way that says you change the speeds, then I'll listen to that.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. No, I'm not going to change the speed limits for the simple reason that changing the speed limit signs doesn't work. On those streets where they've lowered the speed limit from 50 to 40 kilometers an hour, the city's own reports show that average speed decreased only 2%. The fact is that the majority of drivers drive to road conditions. They don't drive to posted speed limits. There is a minority of people who do, and that's why it's very dangerous when you have a highway that's built for 110 or 120 kilometers an hour and you put a speed limit of 80 kilometers on it, because you'll have 15% of the population that will drive it at 80 kilometers an hour, and the other 85 will push it and go 20 or even 30 kilometers above the speed limit, because that's what the road and the conditions are built for. So I think the most effective way to calm traffic is having traffic calming measures. Obviously, in neighborhoods with narrow roads and constricted roadways, people are naturally going to drive slower. That is how you get slower speeds. But on major arterial roads, it is an exercise in futility to have speed limits lower than 50 kilometers an hour.
Thank you. And now we've got Barrett and Chica. It looks like Chica's asleep. Is that okay? We can proceed? Okay, Barrett.
Yeah, thank you. I'm born and raised here. I live right at the end of the block here. So I see all the changes in this city, good and bad. And I just want to know what can be done to stop stigmatizing and vilifying my fellow citizens. Because I've attended all of the mayor debates, and I see these angry candidates separating and dividing us. They're calling us special interest groups if we're cyclists.
Could you
or
make it a
First
question,
Nations.
please?
Yeah, my question is, what can be done to stop vilifying and causing division amongst my fellow citizens? You know,
Okay.
I'm born and raised here. I see people move here all the time. I don't resent that. My grandmother suffered in residential schools, and I don't feel that she should have to tell her story over and over and over again.
Could you choose two candidates to answer your question?
Yeah, my question is for David Arthur Johnson and for our Mayor Lisa Helps.
Thank you. David? What can we do to stop stigmatizing people?
It will start with a suggestion of patience. Ultimately, as mayor, it would become known that I know that evil isn't a real thing, and therefore hate is intrinsically absurd. And so with patience, we'll be able to see through misinformed or ill-informed ideas the best we can. At the same time, average Joe might be carrying his own little complicities, and so it's important for each of us to analyze our own preconceptions about which way we think civilization is going. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa, please.
Thank you. I think this is one of the most important questions that we're grappling with as a community right now. And the way that I think that we can do it to stop vilifying and name-calling and creating division is to listen to each other's perspectives and to each other's stories with a truly open heart. So every 2 weeks in my office at City Hall, I have a community drop-in, and people come in, everyone comes in, have a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, and I always say, what are the issues? And I ask people, they list the issues, they get to speak at them one at a time. One day, there was a woman who came in and she said, I'm really tired of all the homeless people sleeping in the park next to me. So we listened to her. The next guy on the list, he stood up and he said, I'm homeless and I'm sleeping in a park. And it was an amazing moment for each of them to tell their story and to have the community witness. And that's what we do. We build understanding, one story and one perspective at a time.
Thank you. And now we'll have Zach Peters, please.
Hi there. My question's for Stephen and for Mike. Just wondering how you might go about allocating funds for some of the major projects that need to be done in the city. I think you guys have both talked about trying to lower taxes. So just trying to figure out how you might go about allocating those funds, be it from government or wherever.
Who do you ask a question to, please?
Sorry, Stephen and Michael.
Thanks. Is that clear?
I hope so, but correct me if I'm wrong. Our taxes have gone up. Since 2012, they've gone up more than double the rate of inflation. Now, the mayor says that that's better than the previous administrations, but I don't think that's satisfying for people, that the taxes have gone up way too much. Our group, the new council.ca group team has said that we will work towards making sure that the taxes don't go up more than the rate of inflation. And it's our desire that they can be less than that. But there's a lot of economic pressures on the city. There's a lot of things that people expect to be done. And so when you're allocating anything towards any of the budgets, just the normal operating budgets, then you prioritize things. Just like in our own home, what are the things that need to be done? What are the things that can be done? What are the things that make life enjoyable in our city? So it can't just be all dollars and cents about these kind of things. It's what are the important things? And then for the capital projects, you got to make sure that if you go to a referendum, that you've got to make sure that those capital projects meet the requirements for the city, that we're not wasting that money.
Thank you for the question. Yes, our taxes have been doubling every 8 years. That's simply unsustainable. And in terms of accessing federal and provincial dollars, I've talked a little bit about my track record, the work that I did with C-SPAN, the work that I did to get public dollars for MRI facilities, but I've also done work in other parts of British Columbia. When the Round Lake Treatment Center, which is a treatment center that's run by First Nations, was in danger of having its funding cut off by the Interior Health Association, they hired me and I got those dollars restored. In terms of bringing dollars in from the federal and provincial government, yes, I have excellent connections to the provincial government and the federal government. I successfully lobbied along with Tim Raybald for the creation of the First Nations Finance Authority, which is actually modeled on the BC Municipal Finance Authority, so that the more sophisticated First Nations like West Bank can engage in the kind of capital projects that a municipality like Victoria can. So in terms of holding the line on taxes, we also have to make sure that we're getting our fair share of dollars for low income, mixed income, and co-op housing. That's very critical.
Thank you. And at this point, we've got our next four speakers coming forward, please. Carmen McNamara, Nancy McGregor, Derry McDonnell, please come forth, and Jim Spensley. In that order, please. Carmen, Nancy, Derry, and Jim.
Sorry, I wasn't on the list, but I was told to just hang out to ask a question, if that's okay.
I think you should put your name on the list, sir. We'll do our very best to get you in. Please, I think we have time. I hope so. So Carmen, Nancy, Derry, and Jim.
Thank you. My question is for Bruce McQuiggan and Stephen Hammond. It's actually changed a little since I first wrote it, so I'll try to get on with it. We are losing our mature tree canopy to disease, drought, and developers. For instance, at the Truth Center, a whole forest is coming down along Fort Street, and this is a mature forest. This is happening when climate change invites us to see our world with new eyes. Now, I want to know what you will do to protect and add to our low 18% tree canopy. And I also want to know what you will do to bring a First Nations approach to how we deal with many issues, and in particular, the land. Thank you.
Thank you. One question, please. So perhaps the first one. Is that correct? Do you have your two candidates?
I did say Bruce and Stephen.
Sorry, thank you. Bruce and Stephen.
I'm going to have to wave off on the First Nations approach because I'm not a First Nations person. So speaking for First Nations communities on their approach to dealing with these issues is not something I'm comfortable doing. On the other issue, I think one of the things that we've seen happen, all of us have seen happen who've lived in Victoria for any length of time, is these transitions that happen in our neighborhood, these new developments that happen. And although I'm frequently framed as anti-development and sometimes I actually feel that way, we can fit in some development without necessarily destroying open space, green space, and our forest canopy. We've talked about the Truth Center already, but this is happening on infill and development, gentle density projects in neighborhoods where trees are coming down and everything else. The first thing I would do is I would protect institutional zoning so that we don't lose things like downtown schools, churches, the Truth Center, parks like we've lost all over the city, well not parks, playing fields we've lost all over the city to development projects in order to protect space where trees can grow. The second is actually to enforce and strengthen the tree bylaw.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Because we talked about trees already, if you don't mind, I'm going to talk about climate change. And I know that the city, I know that the region really wants to make sure that we are having an impact on people getting out of their cars. Now, it was interesting because coming here today, the thought, or someone asked me, they said, well, you know, are you going to be driving over? And I said, of course not. It's a 6-minute cycle ride. And it's my favorite way of getting around town. And believe me, with some of the congestion, you want to do that. And so I want to be encouraging people, when we talk about climate change, I want to be encouraging people to find ways that they can have small contributions for climate change. When I look around this neighborhood, I see all these wonderful little parks, and I see that people are part of it, where they're growing vegetables and they're growing different plants of different kinds. And there's all the big stuff about getting people out of their cars, but there's also small things that people can do, including making sure that we don't lose the tree canopy. But there's a lot of things that every one of us can do on a regular basis for climate change to help that out.
Thank you very much. And I believe David would like to play his wild card, second wild card.
Once mayor, one of the proposals I'll be drafting will be a new permaculture makeover for Victoria. I'll be enticing, well, ideally I would get 10,000 gardeners, but it will start off probably in the hundreds, and offer them free rent. And from there, I have many friends in that area, and the ingenuity is divine, essentially. Getting all these people with the Parks Department's gear and the spaces that Victoria has and the influence we have, I think we can turn this entire town into a metaphorical Rivendell, food growing everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, another wild card. Lisa
Thank
Alps.
you. I never want to give up an opportunity to talk about trees and climate change. One of the things that we announced this past week, my campaign, is to build on the success that we're already having in the city with tree appreciation days. So we do a couple per year. We get together with some people on a street and plant 10 or 12 trees. What we announced this week was an urban tree planting festival. So once a year, in every neighborhood at the same time, neighbors will come together on their streets under the guidance of parks workers and plant 1,000 trees in one day. Right now, we plant about 383 trees every year, 1,000 trees in one day as a city. And each year, we'll do that. And what that will do is it will add to the 33,000 trees we already have on public property. And we've been working really hard with our Parks Department over the past few years to make sure that the trees that are planted are successful, that they thrive. 95% of all trees planted in the city, they live because they're properly cared for. So increasing the tree canopy is a huge priority, and you'll see it when you go to my website and look at my platform.
Thank you. I'm just going to again mention there are seats that are not occupied for the people in the back. If you wish to stand, that's fine, but if you wish to sit...
Several seats here.
there are some seats available at the front, please. Okay. Derry, please. Your question?
Excuse me. My question is for Mike and for Stephen. Gentlemen, 2 years ago, you appeared at a public hearing on the Mount Edward Court rezoning to provide housing for seniors people, and you both made very vociferous complaints and presentations to the city at the time, accusing them of everything from being insane for even considering it, and how you would consider it criminal negligence if they actually approved it. You, Mike, actually made a
question, please.
Made a prediction that a horrible event would happen if they went ahead for it. The question is, we're 2 years on, absolutely nothing has happened at Mount Edward Court, even it comes even close to the description you gave of it. So how
what is your question?
How can you claim today any credibility whatsoever to speak on homelessness and poverty in the city?
Thank you. No applause, please. No applause.
Thank you for that excellent question. First of all, when I spoke on this matter, I was representing my client at the time, which was the Christ Church Cathedral School. So I was expressing the concerns that they had that there would be a lack of proper vetting. And because of the pressure that we put on the city, there was proper vetting. And so we didn't have a shooting gallery, and it became the facility that we wanted it to be, which is a dry facility caring for those age 55 and up. So I make absolutely no apologies, sir, for wanting to safeguard children. So, and the fact that I have Rob Duncan, who is a well-known anti-poverty and housing advocate, endorsing my campaign shows that I am a strong proponent, and I do support a housing first strategy for the homeless. So yes, do I want to make sure our kids are safe? Yes, I do. I also want to ensure that the people who are homeless because of physical or mental disabilities are not put cheek to jowl with people who have drug and alcohol addictions, because their safety is important to me as well. So I make no apologies for making safety first and foremost, and thank you for the question.
Thank you. Thank you. Please, please. Stephen?
When the provincial government, who had done a horrible, horrible job by allowing the tent city and the courthouse steps and then not having anything in place, when they were saying that when they bought Mount Edwards, and they were saying it was a low barrier, which basically means no barrier, which basically means there's going to be no restrictions. And when the CEO of the social service agency that is running that said to the parents at Mount Edwards, or sorry, to the cathedral, said, did you give any consideration that it was right across the street from an elementary school? And the answer was no, we gave no consideration. We needed those rooms. So we got a lot of the change that happened because we actually were saying you can't be doing this. Now, it is my desire that the people that are in Mount Edwards are going to work out well. But the difficulty is that didn't come because of the kindness out of their hearts. It was because there was a lot of people who said, you cannot put all those people with so many problems right across the street from a school.
Thank you. Okay, Jim Spence-Lee, please.
First of all, thank you for those that went ahead of me and talked about trees and climate and the rest of it. My question deals with it similarly. I'm a pedestrian, and one of the things I've seen in this city is room for cars and room for bicycles, but no room for pedestrians, at least no increased room for pedestrians. And my question, I'll send it to Lisa and Mike, I guess I'd like to send it to everybody, is can we please have a pedestrian area that's devoted all to pedestrians, such as Government Street? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, you can. It's in my platform to open Government Street to pedestrians only in the summer months, in consultation with the Downtown Victoria Business Association, the businesses, and the residents. And in fact, because people like you have been calling for this forever, we decided this past summer, Margaret Lucas, who's not running again, took the lead and created a pedestrian-only Government Street on Sunday afternoons from 12 to 5 between Fort and Yates for September, or August and September. And talk about not even taking a baby step, that's just kind of crawling in the right direction. But we did it. And if you were down there, you would have felt the city felt different. There were kids playing giant Scrabble in the middle of the street. There were kids hula hooping. There were parents who had gone into Murchie's, got a cup of coffee, were sitting there watching their kids. There were grandparents playing giant chess with their grandkids. It was amazing. So absolutely yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. I would absolutely like to see this a more pedestrian-friendly city. One of the ways I'd like to do that is make sure that at all intersections we have the equipment so that people who are visually impaired, they can hear the sound, so it lets them know when it's safe to walk. And in terms of Government Street, yes, there needs to be proper consultation with the stakeholders, especially the small business owners on that street. But certainly, I'm amenable to doing something like that for the summer months because I think it would also be a boon to tourism. And in terms of, I know there was a question earlier on amalgamation. One of the reasons I'd like to see us amalgamate with Saanich is I think the entrance to our city should be improved and that we should have elevated bike and walkways going across both the north end of Douglas and the north end of Blanchard. I think that would tremendously add not to the walkability and bikeability of our region.
Thank you. And we have 4 more now. Please come to the mic. Sean Leitenberg, James Embler, James, Pam Grant, and then John O'Brien. And then that's it. 4 more. Okay. In that order, please. Sean.
My name is Sean Leitenberg. I'm running for Victoria City Council. We have a real problem keeping doctors in this city, and I'd like to see something done about that. One suggestion I have is to reduce the commercial taxes that a doctor pays on his office so that we can incentivize more doctors to move into Victoria and less to leave their private practice. I've lost 2 doctors in the last 5 years. Luckily, I have friends. I've got another one, but I know tons of people who cannot find a doctor. So I'll ask Bruce and Lisa whether they would follow suit and agree that we've got to do more to incentivize doctors to stay in Victoria with the possibility of reduction in taxes.
Sorry, Sean, I'm going to say I disagree. Doctors make an awful lot of money. They can afford to live here. Maybe they can't afford the same kind of house that they have, I don't know, in Smithers or Vernon when they're living here. But a doctor's salary is pretty good. It's a couple of $100,000 a year. And so they, and that's when they're working 40 hours a week. I have a couple of friends who are doctors who haven't left here, who actually stayed here and have been in practice here for 20, 30 years, and they just recognize, well, they might have to step down to an Audi from a BMW, and they might have to have a 2,500 square foot house instead of a 5,000 square foot house, but that's the price we all pay for living in Victoria. And why should they pay less of a price when they're already making 6 figures whenever they want to? If we're going to actually subsidize housing for anybody, I want to subsidize it for everybody else, people earning below the median income, not the top 10% of income earners in the city. So I'm sorry, we're going to have to agree to disagree.
Thank you.
Thank you. The doctor shortage in our community is very serious. It's serious across the board. I was meeting the other day with some young folks in the tech sector, and they're trying to attract people here to work. And the question is, can I find a house and can I find a family doctor? And the family doctor is the thing that's made some people say, I can't take a job here. It's really starting to hamper our economy. It's starting to hamper our seniors. And so we do need to do something about it. I don't know that tax breaks are the exact thing to do, but I've been meeting with the Downtown Victoria Business Association, the Chamber of Commerce, some folks from Island Health to try and get our heads around this. And working together with the business community and with Island Health, we will find a solution. Goderich, Ontario has done some really interesting things in terms of attracting doctors. There was a great write-up in the Globe and Mail a couple of months ago, and I think we can look at what they've been doing. Doctors do make a lot of money, so I don't know that tax breaks are the thing, but doctors want easier way to group together and share a practice rather than having one-offs. That's something we've heard from Island Health. So we cannot ignore this, and I've already started working on it.
Thank you. James Embler, please. James.
Hello. As a senior that has recently moved to Victoria, I can tell you that it is a very difficult city to enter. And my question to you is, what portion of the city's affordability housing plan is directed to seniors on very limited income. My observation at the moment is that for the average senior who is on CPP and OAS, they're probably looking at spending anywhere from 60 to 75% of their income on rent.
Did you mention
Thank
which candidates you'd like?
Oh, Lisa helps, and Bruce, please. Thank you.
Thank you. The city of Victoria itself doesn't run housing. We don't own housing, but we certainly support the development of affordable housing. And the city runs and participates in the Capital Regional Housing Corporation. We fund the Greater Victoria Housing Society, the Kool-Aid Society, and a number of organizations through our Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I can't tell you off the top of my head how many units in the city are currently for seniors, but I can tell you that with the new monies coming from the provincial government and the Regional Housing First program, we have an aging demographic, and when projects come forward for seniors, those projects are prioritized because we know not only is this an issue now, but this is going to be a significant issue. So our Affordable Housing Trust Fund doesn't discriminate, but we know that we have to respond to demographic trends, and an aging population is one of those.
Thank you.
Boy, I can't tell you how relieved I am that Lisa went first on that one, because I genuinely had no idea. And I'm glad that the answer is 0 in terms of city provided housing. I think one of the issues that we have to start doing is developing communities that have, in terms of funding housing, that go from a range of near market all the way down to subsidized or assisted living, and they should be demographically mixed as well. They should be for seniors as well as people raising young families, and I actually think that the city needs to get into the business of building housing. It's been years. I don't think we can rely on the capital region, and I don't think you should trust a candidate who says they're going to call the province or call the federal government, because you go into office, you pick up the phone, call them, they say no, and you say, sorry, they said no. Promise kept, I called. I think that we actually have to have the municipalities start building housing, and the means to do that is to charge the developers for taking away our zoning from us, just as North Vancouver does, $48 million to our nothing. So we're going to have to do that to get that mixed housing. Thank you.
Pam Grant, please.
Thank you. The interesting thing about this election, besides the fact that there are 9 people currently vying for this chair, is that most of you have never served on council before. I have a question for Stephen Hammond and for Bruce McGuigan. I would like to know what professional experience you bring to the table that qualifies you to be mayor. Please speak specifically. Don't just name jobs you've done, but I'd like to know what you've actually done that qualifies you for this role. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Pam. As Bruce's campaign manager, I'd be more than thrilled to answer that question. The fact is that I've got common sense, and more than anything else, I don't see that a lot of common sense is going on here. I'm a lawyer. I've had my own business for the last 27 years. I consult and I give advice to some of the most senior companies in this country. And as a matter of fact, when Bob Paulson, the former head of the RCMP, the former commissioner of the RCMP, when he was right in the middle of planning the $100 million settlement that he inherited for sexual harassment, he read my 3rd book, The New Norm, and he said, I want you to come and talk to my senior leadership. And so I flew to Ottawa, and I talked to his senior leadership, and then across the country, they had me come and talk to their people. The fact is that there's a lot of things that I have learned having my own business. Every penny that I get is because I've hustled for it, and every penny that I spend comes out of my own pocket. So more than anything else, I will always be making sure that I've got your dollars in mind, and also that I am able to work with all kinds of organizations. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have common sense, and I promise I'm not a lawyer. And I think the guy running the RCMP is not really going to be the best expert for selecting somebody to do bullying and harassment either, unless he's actually training them to do it. We've had a little bit of a problem with that, as you know. I ran Victoria Family Services for many years, for 5 years, as a nonprofit. Last year as an executive director with a staff. And the first time I ran a staff in a youth program, I was 20 years old at Lower Lonsdale Youth Center, and I had a staff of a dozen. I had staff in a unionized environment with the District of Surrey. I've been a senior policy advisor in 5 areas in government plus ICBC. So I've done senior governance stuff at the cabinet recommendation level in the province of British Columbia. I started the Victoria Social Innovation Centre. Not a huge capital project, but a damn big one for me, $2.5 million, and that came in on budget. Matter of fact, last year in Family Services, we had a surplus because of my careful watch on a budget with demands and service delivery and several staff, over 20, sometimes 30. Thanks. So I've managed staff.
Thank you. And at this point, before John speaks, I'd like to call up our 4 last questioners because we do we'll have the candidates do their final wrap-up. So we have just 4 more questions at this point, and they will be, please come to the mic, Ryan Painter, Kathleen Martin, Darlene Archibald, and Pasha Beji. I hope I'm pronouncing that properly. John, would you please ask your question?
Thank you. I'd like to riff off the last question a little bit by acknowledging that the candidates for the mayor's seat are coming new to council. My observation in following a few issues at council is that the city is a system, like any complex organization. And what I observe sometimes is that council is at pains to try and figure out how to develop the procedural construct that allows council to manage what the city is doing.
So your question is, sir, please?
How will you ensure, what performance outcome indicators will you put in place so that the ideas that council brings, reflective of the public, are not ones you end up having to apologize for because of the way they were implemented?
And the candidates?
And let's go with 2 new people to council, Stephen and I think Mike.
Thanks. Actually, I think that the way you do it is just any other time. When I was in management, when I was a lawyer, when I was a manager of labor relations and employee relations at companies across the country, is that you actually just say, here are the expectations, this is how we get to it. If there needs to be a procedure that is set out to get to it, then fine, then you work on that. Otherwise, you ask the people with the expertise to say, this is the outcome that we're looking for, and I expect you to get to there. Can you tell me how you're going to go about doing it? And one of the things that I find is that there's just not a lot of accountability, or people are afraid to hold people accountable. And my job, a good portion of my job, is telling people when someone has gone astray, what you have to do is set out the expectations, and then you hold them accountable. And as long as they're doing that, then you're fine. If they don't, then you say, okay, this is where we have strayed from the path, and this is where I expect you to do this. And if they don't do it, then of course you got to go back to square one, or then there's got to be some accountability in there.
Thank you. Michael?
Thank you for the question. First of all, in terms of working with various municipal councils, I've done that a lot, as well as work with the provincial and federal governments. I spent 7 years serving on Langford's Planning and Zoning Committee, so I got to see firsthand that a municipality can be run in such a way that you can make effective and timely decisions that benefit the community. So, and in terms of the selection of councillors and the mayor interaction with them, I deliberately did not run a slate. I believe that the good people of Victoria should decide who they want their councillors to be, just as they decide who their mayor is. And if I am so fortunate as to be your next mayor after October 20th, I will work with whichever councillors have been elected. I believe there's issues we agree and disagree on, in terms of the various candidates. But certainly in terms of the mandate that I have, I'll be reminding councillors, should I be elected, like, this is the mandate I have, and how can we work together? So I expect that there'll be a bit of horse trading going on, but I will be reminding them of my mandate.
I don't think that answered
Ryan?
Thank you.
Ryan, please.
Okay, they're going to make me bend down on this one. Hi, Ryan. Oh, there we go. Tony to the rescue. You'll have to put it down again, Thanks a lot. Hi, Ryan Painter, candidate for school trustee. My question is for Mike and for Lisa. I'm a 34-year-old young professional living here in Victoria, so of course my question is housing. I'm a renter currently living in Beacon Arms, slated to be demolished next summer, putting up a bunch of people out of housing. My question is, how are you specifically going to advocate for young professionals like myself, young families looking for housing so that we can stay here in Victoria? My family is looking to move to Langford because we can't afford to live here. So how are you personally going to advocate for housing for us?
Thank you.
Thank you for that excellent question. Yes, one of the most critical shortages we have is affordable family housing. One of the things I want to do to end the rent, skyrocketing rent increases is I want to get the provincial government to authorize 3,000 to 5,000 units of student housing at UVic and Camosing. Now, the nice thing about that is once they go ahead, they can't be held up by Oak Bay or Saanich or Victoria. They can start building. And that frees up 3,000 to 5,000 units of rental accommodation throughout our region. And as Seattle has proven, is that if you can get your vacancy rate from 0%, which is where we're pretty much at now, to 6%, then rents stop increasing. And in Seattle's case, they plateaued and even came down a little bit. And 3,000 to 5,000 units of student housing at UVic and Camosing is a good way to start. But obviously, as we're looking at reviewing the official community plan, we're going to have to look at opportunities where we can build affordable housing for young people, for young families, because right now there isn't any, and that means right now our city doesn't have a future.
Thank you. I just want to ask the candidates, I know, did you want to go wild card, or was it, you were asked? I'm sorry, go ahead. Then I'll ask the candidates.
Thank you. Ryan, I will do more than advocate for you. Advocating is easy, but actually rolling up our sleeves and getting the housing built is difficult. One of the things I've been working on since January, when I decided I was going to run for mayor again, was a very detailed plan with a cross-section of the community, and it's all here in paper, but it's also all on my website. So we're going to do things like make it easier for larger garden suites on large lots. There are 5,600 large lots in the city. Right now, you can only build a one-bedroom garden suite. We're proposing 2-bedroom garden suites, housing for families. Right now, it's easier to put up a single-family home than it is to put up a fourplex. One of the proposals coming out of this concept of missing middle housing is to have fourplexes on single-family lots with affordability built into the zone. Not everywhere in the city, not where it's traditionally single-family, but making sure that every opportunity that we have to build larger, more affordable units, just through policy changes, we can do that, and I've got it laid out on my website.
Yes, Stephen, playing his wild card, please.
I want you to know that where I come from, Fernwood has the youngest age of any other part of the city, and it's also got the highest number of renters than anyone in the city. So, and it probably makes sense, right? That there's that correlation. Many years ago, when I was living in Vancouver, I was part of a group that I was actually part of a group that was created, and it was called Renters at Risk. And this is when the BC provincial government was bringing in changes that were ridiculous. As a matter of fact, they were bringing in changes to rental legislation that was actually allow for retroactive rent increases. If the landlord did not give the full amount up to a 4-year period, the landlord could go back, and then you could end up with something like a 14 or 15% rent increase. I was on the news, I was screaming like other people in the neighborhood about that. As a result of that, I was then asked to sit on the board of directors of the TRAC, Tenants' Rights Action Coalition. It's called a little bit something now, but it's still called TRAC. And so I understand the needs of renters, and I will be supporting them as well as homeowners.
Thank you. Now, before we proceed, I have a few more questions. However, with respect to the candidates, we did tell the candidates the session would end at 6, and they may have other appointments, correct? You do have, they do. So we're going to have to end the question period now. I'm very sorry, but it's only we did say we'd end at 6, and the candidates should have that opportunity to move on. So, no, but they have to have their closing statement. So I'm sorry. We'll have to proceed to closing statements now. So we can, and if there's an opportunity on the way out to ask your question, we will, but we did say we end at 6. I will now have 60 seconds each of closing statements, starting reverse alphabetical order with Christoph, please.
Hello again. Just please remember, you are the taxpayers, and if I elected, you can tell me what to do, and I will listen and work with you to solve our problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce, please.
I've done a few of these debates. I am kind of new to politics. At the end of relationships, you frequently end up saying to someone, it's not really about you, it's about me. But this is the beginning of a relationship, so I'm going to say this is really about you, this isn't about me. I'm actually running for office but this is your power and your responsibility. The person you're going to vote for is the one that you think can actually run the show the best. Run a meeting the best. I want to actually say that we really need to make City Hall boring again. We need to make Victoria a little bit more boring again. We don't have to have all this excitement around decisions that are made on the spur of the moment, without proper input, without a decent process, without measurable outcomes, without a process of review, without any apparent planning, completely impulsively. This is about you. You have to decide what your city is going to look like after October 20th, and I'm happy to try to help.
Thank you very much. David?
My name is David Arthur Johnston. I'm a candidate for mayor of Victoria. My administration skills are not honed or polished. I can tell smart people when I'm talking to them. Quaintly enough, being the fellow who catalyzed tents becoming legal in this town and subsequently in the rest of the Commonwealth, I'm the law and order candidate. If you wanted, we have to stop acting like we're prosperous just for a little bit, because we're not. We have some stuff we need to deal with, and I can't be bought or instigated. Give me a think, because sometimes strange and bold things happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Helps, please.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for coming today, and thank you for all of your questions. I want to close by talking about what we all love about Victoria. We love our neighborhoods. We love that our city is walkable and bikeable. We love our small businesses. We love our downtown vibrancy. We love that we're a small city with a big city arts and culture scene. And most of all, we love our sense of connection and belonging and with this place. We have challenges facing us right now, and the biggest challenge facing us is how do we continue to grow and change and make sure that Victoria remains recognizable as this place that we all love. That's our biggest challenge, and what that's going to require is difficult conversations, open minds, open hearts, and working hard together for the next 4 years. And I look forward to that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mentioned that it was a year ago when I asked the question, do we want change? If you're happy with the mayor, then I'm not your guy. But the mayor won by 89 votes last time. And in this year, we have been building a community. We've asked people, are your taxes too high? They said yes. Do you feel like you're not listened to? And people said that they haven't been listened to. They feel as though in their neighborhoods, things are being pushed on them. If you do want to change, you're going to have to consider, what is it going to take to have a change from the mayor? I just want to say that I haven't done this alone. We have built this community. We have built people. We have hundreds of people who are working on our campaign. We get out there every day and we talk to people and we listen. And as a result of that, I've learned a lot. My name is Stephen Hammond. I'm running for mayor and I'm running on the new council.ca team. We're independent candidates, and that includes Randy Joel, Gary Alberts, Stephen Andrew, and Andrew Reeve. And these are very capable people. And if you want a real change, then I encourage you to vote newcouncil.ca.
Thank you. Michael?
I want to thank all of you for coming out today, and I also want to let you know that I will stick around if anyone has any questions that they want to ask of me. Look, in this election, the majority of people are obviously not happy with the incumbent mayor. And in terms of looking at the alternatives, it's a difficult decision for you to make. But look at the candidates that have actually put forward concrete policy proposals and platform proposals, and I invite you to go to votemikeformayor.ca and see the platform that I have. My campaign is not based on anger. My campaign is not based on fear. It's based on common sense and compassion. I want a city where people of all different income ranges and all different ages can continue to live, work, and play here. It's because we're not on that path that I was motivated to run. I want to have a future in this city. I want my children to have a future in this city, and I want your children to have a future in this city. So I hope you seriously consider voting for Michael Geoghegan on October 20th. Thank you.
Thank you so much to the candidates. We express great gratitude for everything they sacrificed. And also to all of you for being here and for your, what I would consider to be very good questions. Thank you.
Thanks to Sid Taffler. Great job, Sid.